Hi everyone, my name's Laura.
And I'm Julius.
We're from Contentious and we are content strategists.
So, in campaigning, a brilliant concept is important. Framing, coming up with a narrative that appeals to the target and the activists, is also key. But on their own, they're not enough.
Too often, we think that the steps in a campaign plan look like this.
They start with step 1, aims, concept and framing, and move straight on to step 2, social media and media. Instead, we think they should look more like this.
So step 1, still aims, concept and framing. Step 2, content strategy. And step 3, content creation and curation. Because in campaigning, if you want to change people's minds, social media doesn't work well on its own, and it shouldn't ever be seen as separate from content.
Or there's a risk of creating an army of parrot broadcasters. Instead of broadcasters, it's more effective to see our supporters as stakeholders. If we educate them and equip them with tools and materials, then they can become activists and not just retweeters.
That means giving people the content they need to move from just clicking a button or signing a petition to taking on a more active role by adapting, creating and sharing, and by talking to other people. So too often campaigns aim for reach alone, and big numbers are impressive, and in some ways they're also useful. They can gain kudos with management, funders and supporters, and they can also be helpful for fundraising. But
reach is not sufficient for making people stop and think or change the way they act. To change the world, we need to focus on depth of engagement. So there are 3 different types of networks. The first, centralised, worked well in an era of print, but we don't think it's the model we should be aiming for in digital campaigning. The World Wide Web and the social networks that are built on it are decentralised and distributed.
This is a virus. The internet is by its nature viral, but some people are still stuck in a centralised broadcast mindset. If we want to harness the huge potential power of the internet, we think we should be aiming for a decentralised viral model.
We can still have a central message and a frame, and also create the conditions for personalised and deeper engagement. Using a centralised broadcast model might get bigger reach, but it's unlikely to actually change anything.
So imagine a message from a campaign retweeted by a friend.
And now imagine a message genuinely by and from a friend about a campaign. If your messages come from real people, they're much more likely to get noticed. They're also much more likely to get others interested and involved.
So a nice example of this was the Women's March recently. I think that social media was full of images of homemade banners, and what central messaging there was encouraged the use of people's personal perspectives and experiences.
So this is an example of a campaign that we worked on together. In spring last year, the Mail on Sunday saw an opportunity to build public support and Tory momentum towards dropping the ring fencing of the UK aid budget. This culminated in an anti-aid petition, more than 250,000 signatures, and a Westminster debate.
Proud of Aid was our response.
So Pride worked well as a frame because it took an existing concept and reframed it in an unexpected way.
Taking a typically right-wing concept, Pride, and appropriating it worked well because it used a value that was a natural fit for Tory MPs who were a key target of the campaign.
And Proud of Aid was by its very nature a coalition campaign. It brought together lots of different international aid organisations. But all campaigns can be seen as coalitions. There are always allies, other organisations, other campaigns, other interests who can amplify the message.
The other thing that made Proud of Aid successful was
having content at its core.
So we were originally asked to build a social media toolkit for the campaign. What we did instead was to build a hub of aid content. So we created and curated articles, infographics, case studies, videos, open source images. So the hub was the toolkit, or more like a tool shed, in fact. We made it as free of branding as possible, and we invited people to find and add their reasons for being proud of AID and to share them.
So on the day of the parliamentary debate, Proud of AID trended all day in the top 5 in the UK, with around 5,000 tweets from 4,000 or so people. But the most important part of its success was the fact that it was cited multiple times in the parliamentary debate, and pride in the UK's AID was the dominant theme of the discussion. There was hardly a negative word said about AID by MPs, and the threat of the new Tory leadership dropping the AID commitment has, for now at least, gone away. So the core of the campaign's success was having a good frame, but then using content strategically in order to facilitate engagement in that frame. People and various organisations came, adapted the content and spoke about AID in their own voices, using their own experiences and linked to solid evidence.
When we facilitate intellectual and emotional engagement, we encourage action. Using content strategically can move us beyond clicktivism to something more substantial and therefore more effective.
So, as well as replacing the metaphor of the toolkit with a tool shed, we'd like to leave you with these bees as an alternative to the virus as a visual metaphor for digital campaigning. A community of individuals working together to achieve a common aim. And if you're interested in finding out more about content strategy and a kind of campaigning context, we're running a teach-in tomorrow afternoon, so come along to that. Thanks very much.